Alright, I'm going to go ahead and check the oil. There's the dry stick. And oil is black, nice and liquid. It's down about a quart. But problem is, when these engines sit for a number of years and you check the oil, if it's got oil in it at all, it's going to look good at the dipstick. That's not really going to tell you much about what's in the pan. So I'm going to open up the oil filter canister and see what that tells me. Got this spring sort of conical shaped with a small diameter facing up. Purelator P51. This is a little standoff. It keeps the filter up off the bottom of the canister. Now I use this turkey baster to draw all the oil out. So you'll always have oil in the canister because that little hole in that center shaft is the drain that drains the oil out. So you'll always have oil at that height in the canister, and that's where you'll have sludge accumulate. I've cleaned it out. I took a screwdriver and I actually dug about 1/4 of an inch of real thick, black, cakey, gooey sludge out of it. So that's more of an indication of what I'm probably going to find in the oil pan. But it wasn't that bad, actually. Make sure you disconnect the battery, because when you undo these wires, they're going to jump over and short out against another one. Possibly. So make sure you disconnect the battery. So with the starter motor out of the way, now I can get to these bolts that I couldn't get to before. I'm going to go ahead and drain the oil out of the pan now. I haven't really seen any clumps, but we'll see. Alright, now to take the oil pan down. Alright, so I've got to move the steering linkage out of the way, disconnect the idler arm, and push it forward a little bit so I can get the oil pan down. There is no nut on the inside of the frame. It's welded, or there feels like a square nut welded to the inside of the frame. And I still never fastened my tie rod ends to the steering arms, so that's why this has so much play in it. You can see I got it wired up still from when I changed my front end parts. Alright. So that actually is pretty convenient because I can move that whole assembly out of the way. So on the oil pan, the hardest bolt to get to are the two front ones because they're sort of right above the cross member. And they're on studs, they're nuts on studs. They're not like bolts like all the rest of them. And the easiest way to get to them is with a quarter drive with a swivel. And they're not very tight. In fact, none of them on the whole pan are very tight. But once you get those two, it's easy from there. Incidentally, this heater hose belongs in this clip right here, which is on top of the flange of the cross member. And this brake line also belongs up on top of the flange of this cross member. They're just hanging down because I never put them back where they belonged. Mainly because when I take the motor out, I've got to clean up and treat and paint the top side of the cross member. So I didn't feel like it was very important to put them back right now. These bolts apparently don't torque down too much. Because that's all the force it takes to break them loose. Just going to make sure they'll all loosen up and that nothing breaks off. But like I said, the torque spec on them must not be very much. I don't know offhand what it is. The two back ones are also studs rather than bolts. looks like the exhaust is holding it. I don't want to cut the exhaust out of this thing yet. So here's a better view of how close the exhaust pipe is to the oil pan. You can see the flange on the pan is wider than the gap between the pan and the pipe. So I'm going to have to undo the pipe where it's connected to the manifold and see if I can move the pipe over just a little bit, because the pan needs to come pretty much straight down. You don't have a lot of side-to-side play when you're trying to remove the pan. Alright, so here's the pump and here's the pickup screen. This is a protective shield over the screen. Here's the dipstick. This is a windage tray. This is the reason that the pan has to come pretty much straight down. You don't have any side-to-side movement because of this tray right here. And here's another look from another angle. There's the pump, the pickup, and the dipstick, and the windage tray I was talking about. And main caps, counterweights, connecting rods. It's pretty dark up in there. Alright, so there's what we got inside. It's only about 1/4 of an inch on the bottom of the pan, but it needed to come out. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. I'll go and play with this for a little bit, clean it up,